Hello friends, welcome to everyone on my channel Story Station. Today, I'm brought to you on another new interesting episode of r/AmITheA. Before starting the video, if you are new on my channel, please subscribe to the channel and also press the bell icon so that you can get my upcoming video notification first. So let's start the video. Story posted by relative permission 5. Am I the a-hole for giving my son a bill for half his expenses? My son, 17, asked me for a new gaming system, and I said no, because he already has plenty of gaming systems and games, and doesn't need more. If he wants one he can save up and buy one. He then comes to me with a budget on how we can afford the system. It was mostly just that, if I buy nothing for myself for 2 months, we'll have enough for the system. I told him hell no, it's offensive and, if he wants the system he has to save up for it. Then he comes back with another budget. He and his father calculated how much I've been paid in child support over the years and they decided it would be a good idea to let me know how little a drop in the bucket the gaming system would be. I told him I spend that on his expenses every month, but he didn't believe me, so I told him that, if he doesn't think so, he can pay me for his expenses every month and I'll give him the child support. Surprise surprise, when I gave him the bill, it showed that, when you factor in all of the things I pay for in a month, it's much more than child support. Child support doesn't even cover 30%. Now my ex is yelling at me for making our son feel like an expensive burden, but I think I was teaching him a lesson about money and unteaching him some of what my ex says about support. Am I the a-hole for giving him a bill? ETA, not able to comment, but just wanted to say this isn't a question of being able to afford the console. I can afford it, but that doesn't mean he should just get it. Now, Redditors gives the best suggestion to OP on this situation. Not the a-hole. You told him no, and then his father, who probably thinks he pays an exorbitant amount of child support to fund your lavish lifestyle, decided to put his 2 cents worth in, and it blew up in his face. You countered his budget with the actual household expenses. He's not mad because you made your son feel like an expensive burden. He's mad you embarrassed him and made him look a fool for all of his presumptions about your monthly household costs. Not the a-hole. Your ex isn't upset that you made your kid feel like an expensive burden, which you didn't by the way. He's mad cause he was trying to make you look bad and it backfired royally. He's been telling your son that you've been spending all that child support money on yourself. All this budgeting talk your boy came up with, that was just your ex trying to paint you as a neglectful selfish parent. What he hoped would happen is that you would cave and buy him the gaming system so he didn't have to, while simultaneously planting little seeds of friction in your relationship with your son. And he would come out as the good guy who helped his son get what he wanted. It would have been a win-win for him. Only he didn't count on you having such a detailed budget. Now his son knows that mama is a real provider and that, by default, makes him look like he is unable to fully support his son, and or that he weaseled his way out of paying his fair share. Your ex is basically just super butthurt that this'll blow up in his face. Your son is just your typical butthurt teenager. It'll pass. Not the a-hole. Your son was way out of line to come to you with his child support numbers. That was dad stirring the pot, but your son's 17 and was being an ass. Go to your kid and tell him that you knew he was going to be expensive when you had him and that you love him more than money and always will. P.S. Your ex is a douche who doesn't like his kid knowing how much more you've done for your son financially. Not the a-hole. It would have been an a-hole move to give your son a bill just to shame him, but that's not what you did. Your son was incredibly entitled and rude to you. He and your ex both implied you take the child support and spend it on yourself. You proved otherwise. And you're right. You did teach him a lesson about finances and how expensive it is to raise a child. Edit. Also, not that this isn't obvious, but a gaming system isn't a necessity. It's important you also explain to him the difference between a want and a need. Bills, food, clothing, toiletries all need to come before luxuries. Not the a-hole. If your son had all that time to come up with a budget so that you could afford to get a new gaming console. I'm assuming PS5 maybe. Then he can take that time and look for a part-time job to buy the console himself. You didn't give him the bill expecting him to pay it, but to give him an idea of just how expensive raising a child is. If your ex is yelling at you about your bills, then he can either chip in for the system, up the child support, or keep his nose out of your finances. Not the a-hole your ex was being rude, helping your son scheme to try and guilt you into buying him something expensive saying child support would cover it. Your son was also being rude, suggesting you not spend any of your hard-earned money on yourself and accusing you of not using child support to cover his expenses. I think this is a good lesson for your son. As a teenager myself, I understand how a lot of kids don't understand the value of money, and I think this is a good way to teach him. You never said he was a burden, you just showed him how much you spend on him, so he would understand why you didn't want to buy him something so expensive that he doesn't need out of nowhere. That was an entitled way to act, assuming he deserves it for no reason. Not the a-hole. Hahaha. This reminds me of some of the things my dad would say. When I was in my 3rd year of uni, he was furious when I told him I was running low on money and planned to get a part-time job to make up the difference. He said something about how he gave my mum all this money for a college fund and she must have spent it on herself. I asked my mum about it. It was only $11,000, enough to pay for like 1 semester of tuition and living expenses, and my older sister had used most of it. He just had no idea how much our expenses were. He also never paid any child support, so I would not have blamed my mum for 1 second if she had used that money. Some dads, man. Not the a-hole. If you were merely in the habit of ranting to your son about how expensive he is, you would be the a-hole. But in this case, I think you rightly gave him a reality check. Even if you could easily afford to buy him a gaming system, it's an expensive recreational item that only he wants and that only he would use. He is nearly an adult and can save up to buy it himself. And for him to ask for something expensive and you to say no, and him to come back and repeatedly try to convince you to get it for him anyway, not once but twice, you were well within your rights to take the tack that you did. Story posted by No Baptism a Hole. Am I the a-hole for telling my wife her parents are not allowed to ever watch our son again? My wife and I have a 2-year-old son and have been married for 4 years. Our anniversary was a month ago, and we found a nice, secluded cabin on Airbnb and rented it out for a long weekend getaway. My wife asked her parents if they would be willing to watch our son, and they agreed as long as we dropped him off at their house. That worked for us, since it was on our way anyway. I was raised Lutheran and my wife was raised Catholic, but neither of us currently go to church and have not had our son baptized. My Mill knows this and hates it. She thinks our son needs to be baptized or he will burn in hell. She's that kind of Catholic. So we go on our trip, and when we pick up our son and ask how the weekend went, Mill says everything went fine and that she has saved my son's soul from the devil. I ask her what she meant, and she says she had our son baptized that morning at her church. I tried my best to keep my cool, so I didn't scream at Mill in front of my son, but I pretty much grabbed my son and left. On the car ride home I was fuming and told my wife as calmly as I could that this would be the last time her parents have our son unsupervised. She tried to downplay what her mom had done, but I told her we need to wait until we get home to talk about it, because I'm not fighting in front of my kid. When we got home and had a chance to talk about it, things got heated. I told my wife I no longer trust her parents with our son, and that if they did something like this behind our backs, I can't trust them to respect our wishes as parents in the future. I said this was a huge breach of trust and I will forever look to her mom differently. She continued to try to defend her mom, saying that she was only doing what she thought was best for her grandson. She even downplayed it by saying that it's just a little water and a few words and we don't go to church anyway, so what does it matter? I told her that under no circumstances will I allow her parents to watch our son by themselves again. I said that we can still let them see their grandson, but only if we are present. I also said that if she doesn't see what the big deal is with this situation, that maybe we aren't on the same page as parents and maybe we need to see a counselor. She started crying and said that this isn't the kind of decision I get to make on my own, and I'm an a-hole for trying to tell her what kind of relationship her parents can have with our son. I told her that I no longer have any trust or respect for her parents, and that I don't know if there's anything they can do to repair that. I told her I don't care if that makes me an a-hole, but what her parents did was unforgivable in my eyes, and they put themselves in this position to lose privileges with our son. She's been trying to convince me to change my mind for the last month, but I'm not budging. To me this is a hill I'm willing to die on. Now, Redditors gives the best suggestion to OP on this situation. Not the a-hole. Your wife is downplaying her mother's actions when she should be standing up next to you as half of a united couple. Your wife is deliberately closing her eyes to what's happening and is putting your marriage in jeopardy by trying to say this breach of trust was no big deal. Your Mill's actions weren't about her concern for your child's soul. It was all about a power play and interfering in your marriage. Your wife is playing her part well of being the apologetic, excuse-making, enabling, and compliant little girl who doesn't want to make mommy mad. Suggestion 1. Make that marriage counseling appointment and keep it. Suggestion 2. Contact your Mill's church and speak to the priest who performed the baptism. Go in person. Explain how Mill went behind your back. Ask why the church allowed this to happen without the consent of the child's parents. Tell the priest you are a Lutheran and you are furious with Mill. Tell him there is zero chance your child will be raised as a Catholic. Tell him Mill is untrustworthy. Ask him what action, if any, he plans to take. Suggest he speak to Mill about her deception and suggest he offer her some guidance about honesty and non-interference. You want this priest to go to Mill and explain what she did was wrong. You want Mill to know you told her priest about her sneaking and smugness. Suggestion 3. Stick to your prohibition on leaving your child alone with Mill. She'll start indoctrinating him as soon as she can by teaching him prayers and rituals. She can never be trusted again because her excuse is I know better than you how to raise this child. Not the a-hole. Report the priest and or parish that performed it without your consent to either the diocese or the archdiocese. The Catholic Church forbids baptism without parental permission. The baptism won't be officially recognized as a result, and if Mill lied and claimed she had your permission it will land her in hot water with the church. To your wife, letting her get away with something because she thought it was best for her grandson leads to a slippery slope. What if your mom decides it is best for your son to live with her during the week and you and your husband only see him on the weekends? Are you going to let her get away with that? It isn't her kid. She doesn't get to decide what's best, only his parents do. Your mom stomped the no baptism boundary. If you let her get away with it, she will stomp other boundaries you set up using the argument it's what I think is best for grandson. Next boundary could be, don't give him too much sugar. That stomp could cost you a lot of money. Young children, when they have cavities, have to be knocked out in order to get them fixed. It's not cheap. My nephew's last dental procedure, he has weak tooth enamel, cost my sister $3,000 out of pocket. Insurance picked up the rest, but it was a fight to get anesthesia covered. Dental insurance didn't want to cover it. Health insurance thought dental insurance should cover it because it was a dental procedure. This is a tough one. On the one hand, your son is 2, so he likely won't remember or understand what happened. This isn't like the post yesterday where the Mill told an 8-year-old that she would burn in hell if she didn't accept Jesus and let herself be baptized. On the other hand, there's nothing saying your Mill won't partake in that kind of behavior when your son is older. On the other hand, putting a permanent ban on your Mill is kind of extreme. It would be better to put her in a timeout and give her the opportunity to change her behavior. That's your wife's mother. You put her in an awkward position by making absolute proclamations like this. I think not the a-hole for being upset and not the a-hole for not trusting your ILs, but I think before you make any never/ever proclamations, You need to explain to your mill that what she did wasn't okay and that you're reconsidering how much you trust her with your son. Definitely also hit up the counseling. Your wife needs to understand that this is 10/10ths on the importance scale for you, and that kind of trumps it only being a 3/10ths on the importance scale for her. You also need to understand that it's very harsh to unilaterally ban your partner's parents from things, and to tell your partner that you have no respect for their parents is almost always going to sting, even if you're in the right. Going against the grain here apparently, but you are the a-hole. Was what your mill did wrong a huge breach of trust and something to be discussed? Yes, absolutely. Did it actively hurt your child in any way? No. I get it's an issue with respecting your choices as parents, but you are the a-hole because you're now trying to make unilateral decisions about whether your partner's mother can see your child without considering your partner's feelings on the situation and the effect your decree will have on her and her familial relations. She's right, you're an a-hole for trying to force this decision on her on your own. This is something you and she need to agree upon. And you're telling her it's your way or the highway, and guess what? If she chooses a highway, your son is going to see your mill unsupervised, whether you like it or not. Everyone suck here, so I agree with 95% if what you have said. I think in almost all areas, you are completely correct. The only thing I think you're going a little too big on is the never can fix what they did part of it. You and your wife are a team. You need to be on the same page about this. But you going that strong on the never part of it is clearly too much for your wife. If her parents turn their behavior around and improve, there needs to be a path towards reconciliation, or your wife will not be on your side. I'd rather get 90% of what I wanted with my wife as my team vs fight for 100% and her be against it. Because that leads to resentment or secrets or lies or nothing good. Be willing to allow them to change. Make it clear what your expectations and needs are. Make sure the time and actual change part is very clear. Make that hill to climb hard to do, but don't make it impossible, or you'll lose out. So friends, how did you like today's story? Comment below, and if you find the video interesting, then like and share this video. If you have not subscribed to the channel yet, press the subscribe button, and also hit the bell icon. Because I keep making videos like this. So friends, that's all in today's video. I meet you again in new video with new story. Till then, take care of your and keep watching the story station.